Okay, so we are restarting now module 7.4, dynamic compartments and planar polarity part 2. We'll continue from where we left off on module 7.3. And what we'll do now is we'll now use what you learned about dynamic compartments in module 1 and 2 cells to now make a very large simulation of many cells using dynamic compartments, and the objective is to reproduce the PCB model, at least in part of what you have seen from Abisha's mini presentation that she did on module 7.3. Again, this talk is this class is being live streamed on YouTube and being recorded from Zoom, and also be recorded on YouTube. Okay, so for you guys have a chance to watch it back later. Feel free to use all the buttons in Zoom, the chat if you have questions, okay? And all the materials have been made available in Zoom materials, these slides, and also the class exercise, okay? So let's switch back here to our exercise. So this was the last exercise we did, okay? And now I'm answering a question from the chat about why the cells do not shrink and grow. So let me go back to it. There was a question, why did the cells do not completely shrink? Because this target volume was set to 2. And actually, the target volume was not set to 2 when you pixelate the cells, okay? When you create the blue, red, and green, and you assign any cluster ID, and randomly add those new cells inside the original cell, okay? We set the lambda volume to be 2, okay? So the strength of the volume constraint is 2, but the actual target volume of those compartments is set to be equal to whatever volume they have after the pixelization, okay? So if you start a lot of blue cells, the cell will tend to keep those blue cells in the simulation, okay? So does this answer the question from Sharon and Shilai? Not quite, okay. Yes, I'm mute and I'll try to answer your question. Oh, I don't know how to know that.
There we go.
Okay, yes.
Okay, the very first thing you had, I guess that's a picture of it on the screen there. Yeah, you had a simulation which, if you just run it right away, you see this. But if you step through it, you see the dispersed pixels start coming together, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because they start out
and some others disappear. Yes.
Yeah, and so once they get together partially, it's like maybe you have 2 blobs of red. My intuition is that those 2 blobs of red would get pushed around until they happen to touch, and then they'd merge into one. But that's not what happens. One shrinks away and the other grows until the shrinking one away disappears completely. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was trying to understand.
Okay, that happens because they are the same cell, mm-hmm. right? So one, and there's no, because of the same cell, right? One shrinking, the other growing is completely respects the volume constraint plugin, right? Because what meant for the volume constraints that the total volume remains close to the target. Okay, and the reason that one is able to shrink and disappear while the other increases is because they are in principle the same object. They are not, even though they're spatially separated as two objects, right? In the lattice, they are actually the same one. So there is no, this small one does not have a unique identity, and this other one, the second one, the bigger, has a different identity, right? If they have different identities, they will have different target volumes, and they'll be treated as a different objects. But they are
Right.
actually the same object, just got cut in half, right?
So I get that as part of my answer. Like I was thinking in terms of cells, and they're not, they're the same cell. But
Yeah.
is there some kind of unstable equilibrium such that if one gets a little smaller, that's the one that's going to keep getting smaller and the other one's going to get bigger? Like, because you'd expect
Yes,
it just
yes.
random, you'd expect it to balance out and not happen.
Well, it's just because the way that you grow your domain favors the dominance of the big one, because you can only grow your domains by first selecting a select site that belongs to the red.
It has greater surface area, so it's more likely to be selected.
Yes.
That's
yes, more likely to be selected. Yes.
That is the answer. Thank you so much. Now I get it.
Okay.
Now I can sleep tonight.
You can sleep tonight. Good. Okay. All right. Yes. I think that answers the question. Then I will. Okay. So just for interest of time, let's just move on to, let's try to make our planar polarity model, shall we? Okay, so now what you want to do, you want to reproduce what the Bishop shows us, okay? Bishop shows a nice model, you want to do your own version of it. So I don't want to code everything from scratch. What I want to do is actually start from a base file that should find on file 7.33.zip in your folders, okay? And please download the code and open it to see what's inside. Okay. So, and basically that is what you should see, but I'll give a minute for you guys all to go to the student material folders, find 7.3.3.zip, okay? And open and download and open and read it and take a quick look at what is inside the code. So let me just answer your question, your second question, Sharon. You also have to remember that the way that you calculate the contact energies is by whenever you made the lattice site flip, you also have to calculate the energy around the neighborhood, all the pixel sites around that lattice site that's being flipped, okay? And in the case where you have a very small domain, the whole neighborhood, okay, encompass the whole domain. So those 4 or 5 lattice sites completely surrounded by the neighborhood that you draw, okay? So that favors the best way to minimize the contact energy within the neighborhood is to get rid of those cells, those lattice sites. While when you are dealing with a bigger domain, right, half when you draw the circle around the site that's being fixed that you actually calculate the energy, half of them will be belong to the red domain and half will be belong to something that's not red. And then the best way to minimize the energy is to make a straight line across it. So that also what makes the domain with just a few lattice sites to disappear rather than to grow and to grow. Yes, some with curvature. Okay, I was answering Sharon questions while you guys all download. Were you all able to download the file 7.3.3? Yes, okay. So when you open the file, okay, and you first take a look at the XML, so it's always better to, so if you're inspecting a compensatory simulation, you look at the XML first, okay? And what you should see there, you should see four cell types, C, P, D, and L, which stand for cytoplasm, proximal, distal, and lateral sites, okay? So basically lateral, uh, proximal, and distal, okay? And then the cytoplasm is going to be the one that stays in the center. So this will be a 2D model. You're basically viewing the cells from the top, from the apical side, okay? And if you take a look at then the uniform initializer, you see that all cells start at C type, okay, a cytoplasm type, and all the external energies are set to 10, and all internal energies are set to 0. Okay, so so you can tell that this model, you do nothing. There'll be no pattern arising it. Okay. And the last thing that you have to notice that even though all your cells start as cytoplasm, if you run simulation, you should quickly see the cells getting pixelated and you see the pixels rising from the cells. Okay. So and this pixelation of the cells happens at the Python level. Okay. So let me walk you through the code. Okay, so let me. Okay, so here, can you see the code? Right, so what you have here, you have the metadata, simulation is 80 by 8 lattice sites, periodical X and Y. We have those 4 cell types, okay? They all have a volume, okay? So, and then all the external contact energies are set to 10. All the internal contact energies are set to 0, okay? And you fill up, you start simulation with a completely fill up space of cells of type C, okay? And then on the PCP steppable site, what you have here, you have the start simulation, nothing happened at the start. You have this function defined as called pixelate, where it receives the cell object as its argument. And what's happening here is exactly the same as I had before. You create the other 3 compartments. You make sure that they belong to the same cursor ID. And then you go over all the pixels, and then you assign them randomly inside, and then you set the volume of those cells. Okay? But the only thing that's slightly different from what you had before is that this pixelation doesn't happen immediately. It happens at Monte Carlo equals to 1,000. So that's when I go over all my cells of type C, and that's when I tell to pixelate those cells. So now the pixelization algorithm, right, is defined as a function here instead of defining as something that just happens inside the start function. Okay, so it is its own function, but it's basically doing the same thing as we are seeing before. So let me just open the simulation, the player. So if you all open it, okay, let me bring this here on top. What should see, you should see, okay, let me stop and play start again. Okay, but here, if you want to go ahead, you can already click on the button here and adjust the cell colors. So our standard here will be cytoplasm C will be yellow, proximal red, distal green, and lateral will be blue. Okay, so if you want to take time to already do this, you can. So we all have the same cell colors in front of us. Okay, so do this, hit OK, right? And then let me step through simulation. So if I just play simulation, you see that the cells are, oh, sorry, I have the wrong simulation for some reason. Let me go back here. Oh, no, it's a correct simulation. No, this already is PCP, so stop. It's 0, 0, 0, 10, 10, 10. Okay. Stop here. It's here. Okay. Okay, so the cell should start looking like this. Okay. And then at 1,000 multiple steps, they all got pixelated. And then you start see that the pixels are going to look like this. They all have the zero internal energy, which leads to some kind of mixture inside the cells, but not a complete mixture as we have seen before. And we also see that there's absolutely no pattern happening. Those compartments can be whatever they want inside the cell. They have absolutely no preference to be make any heterotypic or homotypic connection between the compartments of the next cell. Okay, the only thing that they keep obeying is that they stay inside the cell instead of just dusting out, because the external contact energies are all set to be 10, which is higher, right? So did everybody got a simulation that looks like this? Let me know in the chat. You read the other swapped in this one too. Okay. Well, pause simulation, go to the command here, change the colors, hit OK, and then step through simulations. Then you stop and open again. Okay. All right. So clearly, this type of energies, everything 10 here and everything 0 internally, will not give rise to any pattern that look like this. Okay. If you want a pattern that look like this, we have to make an appropriate choice in the internal and external energies of those compartments. Right? So that's what we do next. Okay. Let's now go everybody together into a series of exercise of how we can choose the energies to make a PSP-like pattern arising from your simulations. Okay, so you're basically going to make qualitative choice for the digital energies between the external and internal contact energies. Okay, so starting with the internal contact energies, because those are easier. How you choose those energies in order to get something that towards something that have, behaves like this, okay? Or maybe towards something that's going to look like this in the end. So that's the end goal, okay? This picture here of the green on one side, red on the side, blue in between, C in the center, and wherever you have the blue, you have the blue on the other side, and wherever you have the red, you have the green on the other side. So start with the internal contact energies, what those contact energies should be. All right, so for the internal contact energies, what we want, okay? We want all the compartments to mix, okay? So we maybe leave them at 0, okay? Or maybe you can leave them as negative, -2, -5, maybe that would be a better choice than having them as 0. The only thing that we do not want to mix inside the cells, okay, is the proximal distal compartments, because you want one to be on one side and the other to be on the opposite side. So you want the proximal distal compartments to segregate inside the cell. So for these ones, for this pair, we actually want to have an energy that's higher than 0, that would not favor mix, that actually favors separation between those compartments, okay? Maybe you maybe think, okay, maybe you should make those too high, but you don't want to make them too high because you still want the contact energies to be in general lower than the external energies. So instead of putting high here, I'm going to just say like medium, a medium energy between them. Okay. So the next thing, what we want, we can now you have to figure out the internal contact energies. What really plays a trick in order to get patterns is what happened to the external contact energies, okay? So in the external contact energies, what you want? Externally, you want those proximal distals actually to couple together. Whenever there's a red on one side, you want to have a green on the other side, okay? So just like the previous exercise where you have a green on one side, you want to have the blue on the other side. We did that by making those energies low. Here you want the proximal distal to be side by side when two cells different types touch. So you want for sure to make your proximal distal energies to be low, and should be the lowest value of in all those options in this table. Okay. Okay, so what next? So the other thing that you want the C to stay at the center of the cell, right? And you only have the lateral, proximal, and distal to kind of be around the edges where you actually have the cell-cell interfaces, okay? So in order to keep the C inside, you make the energy between C and proximal, distal, and lateral to be high, okay? We make that high energy. So I guess that would make sense, right? The next thing we want now basically if you want proximal distal to be low, we want the proximal distal width to be unfavored, right? You don't want to have red and red and green and green, or to be use better expressions. You want the proximal distal compartment to couple, but we do not want the green and green to couple or the red couple. So we want those two homotypic interactions to be be unfavored. So we prevent that by giving a high energy between distal and proximal. Okay. And then the last thing that we have to deal with is what will be the interaction of the lateral side with the others, okay? So you may think that you also want to make the lateral to be very low to promote lateral coupling on the other sides, but actually that would be a wrong choice because then you start, then instead of having two lateral regions inside the cell, you start having only one, and you get started patterns that is non-PCP. So actually, the better thing is treat the lateral contacts with the other domains to be a little bit more neutral. So for the lateral proximal, and lateral distal, is better to use intermediate values. So let's make it this like medium in between them. Okay, so is a more passive side of the cell, and we let this proximal distal interaction actually dominate the sorting dynamics of the compartments, that they will drive the patterning, and the lateral will just follow along. Okay. So now, okay, I guess that makes should be qualitatively what those energies should look like. Okay, and hopefully those will make sense given the exercise that we did on the previous module. What I want you to do now is you can go back to the code, okay, and I want you to do okay, in my slide, okay. So these are the qualitative choices using energies. The task now that I'll give to you guys is to go back to the code and translate this qualitative description of what the energy should be into numerical values. So the next exercise, you go to the code and make the appropriate choice of numbers to put here in the XML code and see if you get a PCP-like pattern arising in your simulation, right? So I'm gonna just change the slide here while you do the exercise. Okay, so that's the exercise for now. Translate these qualitative hierarchical values into numerical values and see if you get a PCP pattern, okay? So if you have any questions, please post your question in the chat, okay? And I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to try to do that. And as you get, if you get something that looks like a PCP, please share the picture in the chat with all of us. Okay, so we already have our first attempt at a PCP pattern. Let's look at this. Okay, that's great already. So you can clearly see that internally the red and the proximal and distal compartments are separated with a blue sitting in between. Externally, you see that you have wherever you have red, you have green, and wherever you have green, you have red on the other side. So that's also good. Okay. And let me see what else see. So this kind of looks like something that's similar to a PCP pattern. Okay. So you're definitely on the correct side. Okay. So did anyone else get something that looks like a PCP pattern? So I'll just share the numeric values that I chose for this class, okay? So at least my first attempt, I just said, okay, because now kind of going back, circle back to the very good question that Melaine had before, right? How do I choose my numerical values, right? Okay, you have a closed boundary at 0, right? So if make 0 or things more and below that, you're inducing mixing. So on this side, I set 0 to everything that I want to induce, okay? Mixing, I can even think now back on it. Instead of 0, make negative. You guys get better results, okay? And then the other values that are positive, I usually choose around the noise level or the temperature of my simulation. Because my temperature is 10, everything that I have here as medium, I just set equal to 10. So 10, 10, 10, 10, okay? And everything that is low, I set a variable between 10 and 0. So the one that's proximal distal, I set to 5, okay? And then the other ones should be higher. So I set those two here to 20 and this to 25, okay? So when I do use these values, the typical pattern that I get is something that looks like this, okay? So there's probably, you can probably make this even better by appropriately choose values. Or if you do something that like Abisha did for her project, which she run parameter scans, okay, to find the best to optimize the values, then you should get even better outcomes, of course. But you see that by just reasoning out qualitatively what should be those differences, once you translate that to numerical values, you're already very close to something that actually gives a pattern that looks like that is close to reasonable, okay? Of course, yes, you can maybe do a blind search without parameter values, but look here, how many values you're talking about? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay? So 9 values here plus at least 2 other values on the other side. So 10 parameters. So do a blind search here is going to be take too long. It's better to just reason out qualitatively from the biology, right? Or maybe from the biology and the physics and the chemistry, what those energies should be. And then when you do your parameter scan optimization, you do already from a good starting point. Okay. So when you run simulation, you get a pattern that looks like this. Is a little bit similar to what Lampros had, right? It's not that different. Okay. So, and the other thing that you can do, you can, yeah, you have this, right? So it looks similar, but if you, you can please say that, okay, I see that you have segregation of proximal distal, and if you have a proximal, you have a distal on the other side. Where you have a distal, you have a proximal on the other side. But just look at this, you cannot clearly see what is the directionality. So you see that, okay, this is pointing down, 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 down. So it's just like a pattern here down, more towards the left. Here is actually reverse, it's pointing up, okay? So if you just look at those colors here, it's kind of hard to tell whether they are all aligned or not, okay? So one thing that will be really useful in this simulation is, besides the pattern that you see for all eyes, is actually to create a vector field to better visualize these outcomes, okay? So that's what you're gonna do next. So if you didn't have a good choice of parameters, you're not happy, you can just copy the ones that I have here, okay? Or you just download this file 7.3.3a, and then you should get exactly this kind of outcome in our simulation. And then we can go back to the code on Twitter and add a vector field to visualize those cells. So that create a different field where instead of looking at seeing the cells, you'll be seeing an arrow that's going to tell the orientation of those cells. So let's do an exercise to create a vector field. I know that you have already done that on module 7.1, but let's do it again, just to make sure you really master how to create vector fields in Pixel3D. So here, let's go back to your simulations. Sorry, to tweet it, you should have module 7.3 PCP. Find the steppables file, right-click or double-click on it if you have a Mac, right? And select the Add Steppable option, okay? So go back to it, find the steppable file, right-click or double-click on it, Add Steppable, and then you should get a wizard like this, okay? And there are three things I want to do here. First, give a name for this steppable. Let's call cell orientation, would be a good name. Let's make the call frequency to be every 10 Monte Carlo steps. By default, it's every Monte Carlo step, but you can do every 10, okay? So technically, this is not really a frequency, it's more a period of calls, between calls. But you get the idea. Here on steppable type, you just let it to be generic. And what you really want is to get on the extra visualization fields, let's choose the vector cell level, which means that you're going to associate or can associate to each cell a vector. And that will appear in your secondary field. Okay, so give a name, 10, vector field, vector cell level, hit OK. Okay, and when you do this, the 3D will automatically paste code on your steppable, right, on your main Python file and your steppable Python file. And this code should look something that is exact like this or very close to this at least. Okay, so we create the serialization steppable. You have the initialization here, a start, a step function, and this is the standard code that it has. The only thing that's different from just adding a steppable is that you have this new line here at the initialization function, which is called create a vector field cell level Python, and here a standard name vector field cell level name. Okay, so you should all get this, and for the purpose of visualizing the orientation of your PCP of our cells that are making something that looks like a PCP pattern, what you want to do, you want to now customize that steppable towards our objectives. So the first thing I want to customize is the initial part here. So let's go to the next step. So these are the three things I want to change. I want to first, even before the serialization steppable, I want to import all the math functions that Python has. So from math, import everything, okay? And it's always a good idea to have those at hand when you're making your model, all right? The other thing that you want to do is instead of having the vector field cell level name, let's give an appropriate name to the vector field, and let's give a name cell orientation, okay? And this, because it's in code, you can actually have spaces in your name, okay? Because it's in code, it can be whatever you want to be inside there. So let's just give this display name for the field, cell orientation. And the other thing that I want you to do is I want to grab a hold of this vector field that you just created. So instead of having just the self.create vector field directly, I want to actually store that as a variable that I can access later on my step function. Okay, so I want you to create self.field equals to self-create vector field cell level by cell orientation. Okay, so I want to do these three modifications here. And once you have done this, we can proceed to the actually coding the what you'll be visualizing with the field. Does it make sense? Do you guys have any questions? If you want to just follow along, you can just follow along this presentation, and you can download another file that actually have all this already implemented to you. So if you want to just follow along, you can follow along. If you want to code along, you can code along with us. But nevertheless, at the end of the slides, you have you can directly download the end code, okay? So let's continue. So that's the modification that we did on the top. Now, on the step function, what you want to do, first you want to get rid of everything that's in there and replace by your own code. And the first thing you want to do, we want to go over all the cells of type C, the yellow cell which sits at the center of your, well, the compartment that sits at the center of your cell, right? So let's make a loop of all the cells of a type. So this loops of all the C cells, okay? And then you have to type this command here. Let's create the self dot get cluster cells cell dot cluster ID gives a list of all the compartments associated with a cluster of ID of a given ID. Okay, so you're basically reading what the cluster ID of your central cell. You're giving this as an argument to this comment here, and returns a list of all the compartments that belong to that cluster. So you're going to give the C, the cytoplasm, the proximal, the distal, and the lateral compartments. You give the identity of those, all the 4 compartments that made up your cell. Okay. So then once you have a cluster cell list, you got this list and you store that here in this variable. You can start loop over this variable to access the other clusters. Okay. So I do a second loop, and now on this loop I call this cell 2, okay, to be different from the cell 1, okay. And then I do over a loop over all the compartments, and if I find the compartment P, I store that in the dummy variable P, and once I found the compartment D, the distal domain, I store that on the dummy variable D, okay. Because what do I want to do? I want to basically I want to create a vector, calculate what the vector between this side to this side, or from this side to this side. So I want to know the orientation of the cell. So I need to grab this compartment, then I grab this compartment, and then calculate what's the orientation between the center of mass of this compartment to the center of mass of this next compartment. Okay, so that's the logic behind what you're doing here. Okay, so I'm grabbing the central cell, getting its list of compartments. Okay, and then I loop over the compartments, and I grab the proximal, and then the distal compartment. Hopefully, this is making sense to everyone. Okay, and once you do this, you're going to continue. So still at this level here inside the initial for loop, we're going to actually calculate that. Okay, so just remember that you are still inside the for cell or type C loop. Once you grab the proximal distal compartment, I do a quick check if those 2 cell compartments have been found. Okay, and if they have been found, then that's basically what I want to do. I want to grab the center of mass of this cell, the center of mass of that compartment, and calculate the vector calculate what's the vector that connects those two center of masses. And now not only the vector, but I want the coordinates, the x and the y coordinate here, so I can grab the angle between them, okay? And then I can use that to actually tell the self-directed field what to be, to plot that vector, okay? So basically I'm using this command here, self dot invariant distance vector between cells, and then between cell D, okay, and between cell P, okay? So I'm basically getting this vector here, and I'm getting this vector in the form of x, y, and z, the coordinates of this vector. So it's basically the coordinate of this arrow, or the components of this arrow, okay? After I get the x, y, z, so the z is going to be 0, right? Because they're all on the same plane, but the x and y will be different. After I get them, I do these two codes here that you have already seen before. I basically get the angle between them, and then I use this angle to calculate the x, y, and z coordinates, this as a vector. So this vector here is a list of x, y, and z values. And it seems that I kind of repeat myself while I'm doing that, right? It's just because this x and this y, they are some compartment maybe a little bit close to get, some maybe a little bit far away, right? So what I basically do here, I'm normalizing this vector, so it has a norm of 1. So basically that's what I'm doing here, okay? And after I get a normalized vector that connects the proximal distal side of the cells, I fit that into the cell field. Okay, so the cell field that you grab at the beginning, you can accept as a function the cell that you're actually plotting the vector that's associated with, and then I just cell field cell equals to this vector, and then I get the I'm basically populating all my field with all the vectors, each one associated with one cell. Hopefully that makes sense. If there are any questions, please say so in the chat. And now I'm just showing the whole code from start to finish, like instead of being zoom out. So I get a hold of the field, I give the field a name, okay, and there's going to be a field that's going to display vectors, okay. I ignore the start function. On the start function, I'll go over all the yellow cells, okay, get the list of all the compartments that belong to that cluster. I go over them and grab the proximal distal compartment, right? Then I get the vector, the distance vector between them. I normalize that vector and I feed them into my field, into my vector field. Once I do this, and you run the simulation, you should get now two fields, okay? One will be the cell field, and the other will be the cell orientation field that you just defined. One has the cells, and the other has the vectors that show the orientation of those cells, okay? So if you do run simulation, you did not see a second window, you can go here, click this button, and you get a second window created for you, okay? And by default, when you comes out to plot more windows, all the windows come visualize the cell field. You have to actually click here, and then you're going to display menu with all the visualization fields that you define. And then in this case, you only have cell field and cell orientation field. So you select the cell orientation field for the second one, and you can see the cells on one side and the orientation of the cells on the other side. Okay. So here you can tell that you have a kind of a row of cells pointing to the left, and a row of cells point to the right. Next, we have row of cells are pointing to the left, and the cells in between those two are trying to kind of orient upwards. But you have this defect here in your lattice, okay? Maybe if one simulation for a long time, you self-correct eventually, but in this simulation, you just have that's the pattern you have, okay? if you don't want to, if you just want to run this directly on a computer without coding anything, you just download the file 7.3.3b.zip, okay, which has these numerical values, and it has this self-field visualization already coded in for you. So you can just open it uh, and run, and you should see this. When you go to preference, you try to change the vector arrows. The entire preference windows went gray. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on. Let me close this project and open a new one. Okay, so when I run my simulation, I don't get the two fields. I have to actually click here and create a second one. Okay, and then one will be the self field, and the other will be the cell orientation field, which is initially is 0. Okay, nothing happens because you only pixel the cells after 1,000 Monte Carlo steps. Okay, then I run simulation, and when this reach 1,000, you'll start to see the pixelated cells, make a pattern, and the vector field here. Okay, so you see that initially it's completely chaotic. So let's now try to do I'll show the code very shortly. So you go to, well, here you have to go to field. You have to select cell orientation. So here is, you said that's where you, it's all grayed out. Maybe you stop simulation. This can only work if your simulation is actually running. So try to restart simulation, hit pause, and then click here, and then you see if your field appears. Okay. Or maybe you accidentally are running a previous version of the simulation that doesn't have a field, because then if you don't have a field, then this whole thing will be grayed out. Maybe that's what happened. So I'll try this. So let me just show the code here to Sharon. Let's go back here, and here's the code. I think that's it, Melaine. I think the for some reason the okay, it's working now. Yeah, if you stop simulation, then everything's turned off. Okay. So did everybody got the PCP model working and the vector field working? So what I would like to do without disrupting the code here is to show the simulation running here on the side. Okay, and what I want you guys to see is the you see that this is completely random, right? Then as the simulation is running, you hopefully you'll see those arrows slowly aligning, okay? And if things go well, you get all the vectors to align in a single direction. Okay, so that's going to be a very good alignment, okay? And it all happens through the additional energies. So Here I got something that looks very promising. Okay. So he got this pattern here. The cells, well, we have some kind of row cells looking to the right, some looking to the left, and cells here below kind of trying to go down. It's not completely random like I had at the beginning, but you see that a pattern is arising, okay? Of course, remember that we didn't do any optimization of the values, right? There's just guesses, but you see that you right see the effect happening, okay? So Diego is sharing his code. Let's look here. I don't do. So I guess if you just wait a little bit more, you get more alignment, Diego. Lampros is, wow. Yes. So this is what Diego had before. I guess he just wait a little bit more time or maybe make a change in the additional energies. And now he gets something that looks like this. This is almost perfect alignment. So this is great, okay? So this, the whole tissue now is pointing in a single direction from top to bottom, slide to the right, but this is a almost perfect alignment of all the tissues, and you see that you start completely random, and just through the interaction of the compartments, and because the dynamics are dynamic and can freely move inside the cell, right? You kind of see this emerge of this global pattern, okay? I'll have to tell you something from what we learned from our beach simulations. If you run simulation again, it may be that you'll never align. Okay, so sometimes the alignment happens, sometimes the alignment just does happen. Your system is kind of locked in a frustrated configuration, and that alignment doesn't happen. So depend on, but if you vary your contact energies, or if you watch the talk from Abisha again from YouTube, she shared a little bit of what she learned about what makes a pattern good or worse, and then you can code that in your simulation, and you should start getting a model that it will almost always globally polarized. Okay, so Lampros also get something that it looks very promising. All those cells here are pointing in the same direction, there's a little bit of confusion here, but probably Lampros, if you, well, we have some cells that are completely off, but probably if you wait a little bit more time, you achieve global polarization. Okay. So here I'm letting my simulation to keep running as your other colleagues code along with us. Oh, let me just take this out. Thank you very much for sharing your simulations. It's great to see what you guys are getting out. And give this online courses is great because you can reach people from all around the world. But Zoom has its drawbacks, right? I'm not seeing you guys live. So it's, for us, that instruction is very hard to tell if you're really following the lecture or not. But this is great that you're sharing your print screens. Yes, they're supposed to form a pattern, and the pattern exactly as you got it. So the pattern they should form, it should be the PCP-like pattern should be, let me just show very quickly. It should be something like this. Perfect alignment of red on one side and green on the other side. So the cells start completely random. You only have the internal and external energies happening, and slowly, right? First you have the sorting out of the compartments, then you start to have the cells form, and after you wait a long time, you eventually get this pattern where everything is aligned. So this is the PCP pattern that you see in the Drosophila wing. You see uh, before the cells go convergent extension, they usually are planarly polarized. So we can, of course, when we talk about convergent extension in epithelial tissues, they do this, they first polarize, and then they do convergent extension. That happens during gastrulation, during primitive formation in humans and chicken embryos. You see that in the frog. You see, so PSP is kind of thing happens in many places. Okay? So you should see this pattern, and this pattern is what you are getting. In my simulation was looking awful, but now you start to see a pattern arise in that. So this usually takes a long time for happen, but it eventually happens. Okay, so let me place the code back here again. Okay, so I think I'll end here. Okay, there will not be time to talk about cell crowning using anchors. I'll leave that for tomorrow. So the plan for tomorrow, we'll have start to have our parallel sessions, right? I will do one parallel session tomorrow in the afternoon. And in that parallel session, I will show how you can use anchors in CompCell, and also how you can make a bunch of cells and then add force on them. So I'll make a bunch of cells, add links between the cells, then I use the external force to pull those cells, and I'm going to measure the force, the stress strain of that tissue. And then we can do that over and over again to and change or manipulate parameters and see how that affects the force strain curve on cells. Okay, so my breakout session will be about using links to do this kind of stuff. All right. So do you guys have questions? Do you want to share more of your simulations? I'll just, well, I don't want to end up in the Model 7.3 questionnaire because people are still coding along. So we're gonna leave this thing here open, okay? Remember that a copy of this code is available on file 733b.zip. It has this coded already for you. Hi, Sharon. It seems that in your simulation, you have the contact energy between the blue compartments is too low. So they are actually overriding the green and the proximal distal coupling. So my suggestion here is to make the lateral energy a little bit higher, okay? So they will not be competing with the heterotypic binding between proximal and distal. Yeah, make lateral to be a little bit higher, make them 10. Okay, because the lateral should touch the lateral because it has no other option, not because it has an active preference for that. Make the green and the proximal distal to have very low energy, so they really contact, and let the lateral just kind of spread out as a result. Oh no, no, not. Let me go back to the values that I use. Yes. Yeah, lateral everything else is 10. What's really driving the pattern is those three values here. Proximal distal, very low, so they want to come together, and proximal distal very high because they want to repel. So what you got was a non-PCP pattern.
Lampress asks, is there an option to have sliders for changing parameters in the player, James?
Good question. So the answer is that I was going to show you how to do that tomorrow. And if you're using NanoHub, it will work. But in the desktop install at the moment, there is a bug, which we only discovered today. And so I don't want to, I could show you the syntax for it. The syntax is in the Twit code snippets, but at the moment it's not working. There's going to have to be a patch to the current release. It's not a difficult patch, but Qt, which is the library that we use to do the sliders, changed their syntax for the calls. This is always a difficulty when you have third-party libraries. If they change something, then they break your code. And so until we have that fixed, it's going to be a problem. I hope that that will be fixed in the next few days, but probably not by tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean,
ironically, there are two kinds of sliders, one of which are continuous sliders for continuous values, and the other one of which is a pull-down menu. The pull-down menus work, but the horizontal sliders don't work. And it'll throw an error, and it'll look like it's an error in your code, but it's actually an error in CompuCell. I apologize for that. I only found that out today. I was using an older version of CompuCell where it was fine. I updated CompuCell, and my demo stopped working. My apologies. The only good thing I can say is that this is an opportunity to catch a lot of mistakes. And I repeat this, if you're looking at the manuals, we don't refer to the manuals or the demos so much. CompuCell comes packaged with a lot of demos and manuals. If you see mistakes or in the manuals or the demos and you send them to us, we are extremely grateful. If you propose demos to add or corrections to the manuals, we are extremely grateful. And especially if there's a demo package with CompuCell, you run it and it doesn't work, please let us know right away, because that helps us catch mistakes.
so before people head off for the night, I do want to just give those of you who are left here quick announcements about the breakout sessions tomorrow. So we're looking now at day 8. We're gonna start off the day with TJ Sego giving us talk about COVID infection modeling in CompuCell. And he's going to talk a little bit about a different type of network modeling with another software package called MABOS, which is a probabilistic network model instead of the antimony style that we were using, the ODE style that we were using before. We'll have our breakout sessions in module 3 and then in module 4. So James, this was going to be steering panels. What is this now?
I'll talk about histograms. I'll talk about finishing up the delta notch example, and I'll do some of the calcium wave example. But we won't have the steering panels to do. We haven't really talked about histograms so much. If I can, I may also do a little bit of file handling, although I don't know whether I'll be able to get that ready for tomorrow.
I think Jim was going to talk about that a little bit in his parameter scan section too, so we can touch base with him. But, so for the breakout sessions tomorrow, we've got 3. So Julio's already talked about what he'll be covering in his. This is for module 3. We also have Tom Knudsen from the EPA coming to talk about some work that they've been doing recently using CompuCell. And then Shane Hudson from Vanderbilt University that has a very interesting model of secondary palette fusion and disruption that they did in CompuCell in, I believe, 2017. For Friday, we have Derek Moo from Emory University coming to present some work that they've been working on in the last couple of years on germinal center response to various environmental chemicals. Gilberto will be giving us a session on using the Adhesion Flex plugin and CompuCell as option 2. And for option 3, Giuliano, one of our other group members here who has been in the chat a little bit over the past 2 weeks, will be talking about publishing your models as NanoHub tools. NanoHub is a great way if you would like to publish your tool and get a DOI to have it online for people to use, and you can cite it as a publication once it's up on NanoHub. So he will walk through an easy method that he's developed for publishing the NanoHub.
I was
So
going to go ahead.
No, I was just going to conclude. So what were you going to say?
Julio, are you still there? There's a question, which is exactly what I was going to ask Julio. Julio, do you think you can demo how to save movies? We haven't shown any, nobody's shown how to make movies using Player. I don't know if Julio's there. He may have stepped away for a second.
Yeah, Lambros, you're on like the exact same wavelength as us with some features that we would like to get to this week.
So to save movies from CompuCell, you do it in Player. There are ways of doing it automatically, but in general, we do it from Player. I need to double check because I want to make sure that I'm not promising that I'm going to do it for you for tomorrow, for the simple reason that if there are bugs in Qt in the current release, some of those save features may not work in the latest release. And so I need to check that out. I don't know. Julio, have you been making movies? If he's not there, we'll ask him online. Gilberto, you there? No.
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Okay. Have you tried saving movie files recently?
Well, do you mean to save images and then build movies with an extra? Yes, I can do that tomorrow.
So you can add that to your demo?
Yes,
Very helpful.
I can.
Okay, so Lampros Gilberto will add that. As I say, I just need to double check because I just upgraded CompuCell and I want to make sure that I got sideswiped because the demo I was going to do tomorrow doesn't work. I want to make sure that those work on my current one.
Okay.
Yes. So that's right. When you said save in the output tab, it's a little complicated. You have to hit that little camera button inside the display panel to make it work.
Yes. For the only once.
Yep. And so it's not. You could save the raw data sets through the settings in the configuration options. Maybe we should we've got a minute. Gilberto, why don't you just screen share and show it quickly, and then you can go over it more clearly tomorrow. Okay, do you have Player running?
Not really. Let's see. Just a second.
It's not formal and it's good. You have to be patient, but we'll just show it to you quickly so that we can make sure everything works.
Okay, I will open the flowing exercise from today.
Anything is fine. Just screen share something, yes, and show it quickly. And then we'll show it more formally tomorrow. But it takes a little. It takes a second to get used to. Okay.
Let's see. I was running something else here.
Great. Gilberto does this a lot, so it's probably better that he show it than that I show. That looks great. Okay.
Here you have a small button here. That this button is take a screenshot, but also this create a like a folder in your simulation folder, a subfolder in your simulation folder that is ready to save images from the simulation. And these images are saved. The frequency of saving images is configured here in the output. See, update screen every some Monte Carlo step. And if you click this button here, at each 100 Monte Carlo step, for example, in this situation here, an image of your simulation will be saved in the folder you just created. Okay, and after that, you go to that folder. Let's see if I can.
You better hit
Saving this works. Let me try to use another folder. You can say where you want to save the folder or the simulation data. For example, I'm going to change this folder to here. Output is there. And okay. I don't know. Here you click that machine here, and I assume that now I have the data. Let me pause here and open the No, I don't know where is that now. I have to doing on the flight is quite strange. Slide workshop. Oh, this screenshot data.
Let's see if it's there.
I don't think it has something down here. The only it's a JSON file that it's a JavaScript something file that says where Compsel must save the things. So now if I start here and start over, I think that simulation will be saved somewhere in the. I need to organize this output file, the output folder, James. I don't.
Okay, don't worry about it. I thought if you could remember how to do it quickly, it would be easy for him to play with it. But
no, yes, but
the key thing is to find out, to make sure that it doesn't crash when you do it, and that it does save it.
yes, I will test tonight to see if I can.
Because if it doesn't, yes, by default it saves it in workspace, which is not the obvious place for it.
Yes, it's a complicated folder to find out. It's a hidden one.
But if you save the time series,
here,
are they there?
Yes,
yes, they are.
The set of, see, it's saving at 100 Monte Carlo step.
And now if you
actually 10.
Select all of those.
It's something wrong here.
Just select all of them together. Right click. Okay, it should have a make movie option for you. Let's see. No, you may have to, on your computer, it's configured different. On Windows, it's a single, on Macs, usually there's a single button to take those PNGs and turn them into a movie.
I have here this movie maker from.
Right. But actually it's built into Windows and also to Mac. Okay, but the key thing is finding it. It's not easy to find those, and the business of having to hit why you could say, why on earth do you have to hit the camera button to make it save the movies?
Yes. Why?
There is a reason. I'm going to explain it. The reason is the following. When you set up the configuration of your viewer, you could do different views, right? You might do 3D in a section, or you might do different colors. Each time you click that button, it will tell it to save that particular configuration that you have. And so until you click that camera button, it doesn't know how to visualize it to save it. So that's why you have to do that extra button to save it.
See, I just made a small move with those pictures I have. All right.
Okay, but we should probably have had that in the main session. So if you develop those slides, we can write up a little module and maybe do a little recording of explaining how to do it. Because this is, as you see, it's not difficult, but you do have to, it's not obvious.
Yeah.
So I very much appreciate Lamprecht. You're asking great questions.